the number of positions in Canada are much lower as compared to the positions in the US. Even for the Canadians, it's a big competition in terms of the positions. So most of the Canadians too actually start opting for fellowships in the US. They are since the Canadian.
I was asking, what are the key differences between US and Canada regarding the application part, training part, and the registration part?
Yeah, they are vastly different. The health system itself is totally different.
Okay.
So it's a public health system in Canada against a completely privatized health system in the US. So the health system in the US is more like what we have in India, where the health system in Canada is more like what is there in the UK. In Canada, even though it's a very vast country in terms of the size. There are it's like the whole country is not inhabitable, so it's mostly the cities. Most of the universities are there, and most of the hospitals are there, and most of the population resides. So by which I mean that the number of positions in Canada are much lower as compared to the positions in the US. Even for the Canadians, it's a big competition in terms of the positions. So most of the Canadians too actually start opting for fellowships in the US. They are since the Canadian residency is almost fairly equally accredited as any American fellowship, so they would get a preference in terms of the rest of the international candidates. So simply said, that the positions in Canadian universities would be are much less as compared to those in the US. So and the health system is also different. So you don't have in the US. There are lots of private healthcare setups which continue to emerge, and it keeps growing on. So their need for fellows is much more as compared to the need for fellows in Canada. In Canada, a surgeon cannot run multiple ORs at the same time because they do have significant restrictions. So as such, as I said, in the US, they require more fellows because they can run 3 or 4 ORs even legally, and if their fellow is good, they can actually run them quite efficiently too. So the system wants more fellows, whereas in Canada you don't get to operate simultaneous OR. So the surgeon may not actually be completely replaced by a fellow in that setup. So if I may put it right, so in that situation, the surgeon does not require a fellow as much as he requires as a US surgeon requires, if I may put it this way. But otherwise, the setup in North America are quite similar in terms of their resources, in terms of how the residency is set up, how the fellow interacts with the resident, and how the work flow goes on. It's a little much more efficient in the US as compared to Canada, because as I said, the US system is more like our system here. So we want more surgeries and more cases to be done from the hospital's point of view, which is how the system in the US runs. So for us to apply, again, as I said, if you are looking for fellowships, you look for fellowships on the COA website, or the Canadian Orthopaedic Association website. So there is a huge directory. So all the fellowship programs are actually, most of the fellowship programs are enlisted there. And the COA website is open usually between May and September of each year. So for 2023, the application process is done by September 2023, the end of September. And in 2023, the fellows who are going to start in July 2025 would be chosen. So it's 2 years in advance. So you have to plan things 2 years ahead and apply for the fellowships. So or you can you don't need any exams you need USMLE to apply for the fellowships, for a year's fellowship in the US, but you don't need to do Canadian licensing exams to go ahead with the fellowships. So all they need is you to complete your IELTS. So you need the application process for COA requires you to have 3 referees, having a referral letters from 3 of your referees, and then you need your IELTS, and you need to submit your CV. This is all that is required. You don't need to pay anything on the website, and then it gets once the application is completed by September, they go over all the applicants and they start calling in December, January for interviews. So that is how it goes in COA. It's like a cycle which happens 2 years in advance. So here again, since IELTS is going to be cleared by all of us, all that matters would be your referees and your publications and presentations. So that carries a huge weightage, since you don't have any other exams or scores. In USMLE, you do have scores which do have a certain reasonably good weightage, and you usually have a fellowship ahead, so that also carries a good weightage. But in COA applications, most of the times your publications would carry a huge importance for you to stand apart as an international graduate, and for them to notice you. So that